Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that might sting a little, but it's going to bless you if you let it. Some of us are too smart for our own good. We've read every book, watched every webinar, taken every course, and yet we're stuck. Why? Because we've let knowledge become our cage instead of our key. We've replaced action with analysis. We've let our intellect rob us of our instinct. And today, I'm going to show you 7 things you can do to break out of that mental prison and finally walk in wisdom instead of just drowning in information. Most people think the more they know, the more successful they'll become. So they spend years collecting degrees, watching videos, reading books, listening to podcasts, and taking notes. They are information rich, but action poor, and here's the truth that most people don't want to admit. Knowledge without application is useless. What makes the difference in life isn't what you know, it's what you do with what you know. Action beats accumulation every single time. There are people with a fraction of your intelligence, with less education, fewer resources, and smaller networks who are living the life you keep dreaming about. Why? Because they did something, they moved, they launched, they tried, they failed and adjusted. They didn't wait to know everything. They acted on what they had. They didn't let the need for more knowledge become a crutch for their fear. Let's be honest, many of us hide behind learning. We convince ourselves we're preparing when in reality we're procrastinating. We're not getting ready. We're avoiding responsibility. And because we're smart, we can even justify it. We say things like, I just need a little more research, or I'm not ready to launch yet, or I'm still figuring things out. But in truth, we're scared to take the leap. Scared we'll fail. Scared people will judge us. Scared we'll find out we're not as brilliant as we believed. And so we keep consuming and consuming and consuming, hoping that someday we'll feel ready. But ready is not a feeling, it's a decision, and that decision comes through action. Every successful person you admire didn't get there by sitting in a corner thinking their way to greatness. They moved, they tested, they refined, they faced rejection. They launched with imperfect plans. They didn't wait until they knew everything. They acted on what they knew and learned the rest on the way. Action creates clarity. Movement reveals what the next step should be. You can't steer a parked car. But once it's rolling, even a little bit, you can guide it toward your destination. In the same way, when you act, you begin to see possibilities and solutions that were invisible while you were stuck in thought. The other danger of accumulation is pride. When you know a lot, you can start believing you're ahead. When you're actually behind, knowledge makes you feel productive, but action is productive, and the world doesn't pay you for what you know. It pays you for what you deliver. Don't let your mind become a museum of theories. Turn it into a workshop of execution. You don't need to be brilliant to change your life. You need to be obedient. When you know what you should do, do it. Not later, not once it's perfect, right now, because the reward doesn't come to the person who understands the most, it comes to the one who acts on what they already know. That's where the power is. That's where the transformation is. That's where momentum begins. Humility is smarter than pride. That sounds simple, maybe even obvious, but when you look at how most people operate, especially those who consider themselves intelligent, gifted, or experienced, it's clear that pride often takes the front seat. Pride says, I already know that. Pride says, I've got this figured out. Pride shuts the door on growth because it assumes there's nothing more to learn. But humility opens doors. Humility says, even if I know something, there's always more to understand. Humility keeps you teachable, and teachability is one of the greatest assets a person can have in life, business, and relationships. When you think you already know everything, you stop listening, and when you stop listening, you stop learning. Pride is noisy. It wants to be seen and heard. It wants credit and recognition. But humility is quiet and observant, always looking for the next opportunity to improve without needing to be praised for it. The ironic thing is that truly smart people understand how little they actually know. The deeper you go into any subject, whether it's leadership, finance, relationships, or even spirituality, the more you realize the vastness of what remains undiscovered. That's why the wisest people tend to ask the most questions. They aren't insecure, they're aware. They've let go of the illusion of certainty, and instead, they've embraced a mindset of curiosity. That's humility in action. It doesn't mean you devalue yourself. It means you value truth more than your ego. Pride wants to look smart. Humility wants to become wise, and that difference determines your long-term growth. Pride will cost you opportunities. It will ruin relationships, push away mentors, and blind you to your own blind spots. It makes you uncoachable and resistant to feedback. And the hard part is, when pride is running your life, you usually don't realize it until things start falling apart. But humility builds bridges. It invites input. It attracts favor. People want to work with someone who listens, who reflects, who adjusts. Humility doesn't mean you think less of yourself. It means you think of yourself less. It places the mission above the ego. It allows correction without offense. That's real strength. There are breakthroughs you'll never access until you humble yourself enough to admit you need help. There are lessons you'll never learn until you're willing to be wrong. Pride says, I can do this alone. Humility says, I need wisdom beyond me. And that's when the shift happens. That's when divine insight shows up. That's when mentors lean in. That's when people trust you more. Because they're not following a know-it-all, they're following someone committed to growth. It's not weak to ask questions. It's not shameful to seek advice. It's smart. It's strategic. Pride wants the spotlight, but humility builds legacy. You can be right all day and still be stuck, or you can choose humility and watch how fast you rise, not because you forced your way up, but because you were lifted by your willingness to grow. Simplicity scales. The more complicated something is, the harder it is to replicate, communicate, and grow. Complexity feels sophisticated, but it often hides confusion. Simplicity, on the other hand, creates momentum. It makes things clear, actionable, and transferable. When a process, product, or message is simple, more people can understand it, follow it, and pass it on. That's how impact grows. That's how businesses scale. That's how ideas spread, but too often, smart people get trapped in complexity. They try to sound impressive rather than effective. They use big words, intricate strategies, and over-engineered systems to prove how intelligent they are. But what they don't realize is that clarity wins, not cleverness. The most powerful ideas in history are simple. The most successful business models are built on simple value. The most life-changing principles can usually be summed up in a single sentence. That's not by accident, it's by design. Simplicity demands clarity of thought. It forces you to strip away everything that's unnecessary and get down to the essence of what truly matters. And once you find that core, that truth, you can scale it, you can teach it, you can replicate it. Simplicity is not shallow, it's concentrated power. A lot of people mistake activity for productivity. They build elaborate systems, tools, and plans, but nothing moves forward. They've made things so complicated that they can't even use them effectively. They've buried their genius under layers of unnecessary effort. Simplicity frees you from that trap. It forces you to ask the hard question, what's essential? What actually moves the needle? What can I remove, cut, or automate to make this run smoother? Because if something can't run without you explaining it every time, it can't grow beyond you. If it takes 10 steps to get one result, it will eventually break. But if it only takes 2, it will multiply. Simplicity creates freedom. It reduces stress, accelerates decision making, and improves communication. Teams work better when everyone is on the same page. Customers respond more when the offer is clear. Audiences engage more when the message is direct. Whether you're building a business, leading a team, or managing your own life, simplify. Because simplicity isn't the enemy of excellence, it's the foundation of it. It allows you to go deep without getting lost. It allows you to move fast without missing the point. It creates systems that others can step into without having to decode your genius. You can't scale confusion. You can't duplicate chaos, but you can scale clarity. You can train people to do what you do if it's broken down in a way that's easy to follow. You can grow your influence if your message cuts through the noise. You can build legacy if your systems outlive your presence. Simplicity doesn't mean easy. It means effective, and the more effective something is, the more scalable it becomes. What you simplify, you amplify. What you clarify, you multiply. So stop trying to look brilliant. Start making things simple. That's where real growth begins. Mentorship matters. It's one of the most overlooked and undervalued accelerators of growth, success, and transformation. In a world that celebrates independence and self-made success, we forget that no one truly rises alone. Behind every great leader, innovator, or visionary, there's someone who helped them see further, go faster, and avoid unnecessary detours. Mentorship is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of wisdom. It takes humility to admit that you don't know everything, and it takes courage to seek guidance from someone who's already walked the road you're trying to travel. The truth is, experience is a brutal teacher when you try to learn everything the hard way, but a mentor gives you the benefit of their hindsight as your foresight. They've already made the mistakes, faced the failures, and climbed the walls you're staring at. What took them 10 years, they can teach you in 10 minutes, if you're willing to listen, and that's the key. Mentorship isn't just about having access to someone smarter or more successful. It's about being teachable, coachable, and hungry enough to apply what they give you. A mentor is not your shortcut. They are your strategy. They won't do the work for you, but they'll help you do the right work at the right time. Many people think they need more motivation, when what they really need is direction. Motivation gets you started, but mentorship keeps you aligned. It calls you out when you're drifting and calls you up when you're playing small. A good mentor doesn't flatter you. They challenge you. They see your blind spots and tell you the truth you might not want to hear. But that's exactly what produces growth, because when you're left to your own mind, your own doubts, and your own limited experience, it's easy to stay stuck. A mentor pulls you out of that. They expand your vision. They sharpen your focus. They elevate your standard. It's not enough to read books or watch tutorials. Information is everywhere, but wisdom is rare. Wisdom lives in people. Wisdom is transferred through relationship, through conversation, through accountability. Mentorship is not just about learning a skill, it's about becoming a different kind of person. The right mentor won't just help you succeed faster. They'll help you become someone worth following. And here's the beautiful part, mentorship multiplies. Once you've been poured into, you're able to pour into others. You become part of a chain of growth, leadership, and legacy. You can try to figure it all out on your own, but it will cost you more time, more money, and more pain than necessary. Or you can humble yourself, seek out the right voices, and let mentorship lift you, not just once, but consistently, because mentorship isn't a one-time event, it's a lifestyle. If you want to grow beyond your current level, you need to submit to guidance beyond your current experience. That's how leaders are shaped. That's how breakthroughs happen. That's how destiny unfolds. Mentorship matters more than you think. Failure is feedback. It's not the end, it's not a label, and it's certainly not a reason to stop. It's simply information wrapped in discomfort, yes, but powerful, purposeful feedback if you're willing to see it that way. The problem is, most people run from failure like it's something to fear or avoid. They take it personally. They interpret a failed attempt as a failed identity, but failure doesn't say anything about who you are. It only reveals something about what you did, and what you did can be changed, refined, and improved. That's why failure isn't a curse, it's a classroom. It teaches you faster than success ever will. The people who grow the fastest are not the ones who avoid failure. They're the ones who leverage it. They don't fall apart when something doesn't work. They stop, reflect, adjust, and move forward with more insight than they had before. Failure gives you real-time data. It tells you what needs fixing, what's not resonating, where the gaps are, and where your assumptions fell short. You can't get that level of clarity by sitting on the sidelines. You can only get it by doing, trying, risking, and sometimes falling flat. And here's the truth. If you're not failing at something, you're probably not doing anything bold enough to grow. We live in a culture that praises perfection and punishes mistakes, but that mindset will keep you small. If you only act when you're guaranteed success, you'll miss every breakthrough that lives on the other side of risk. The best leaders, entrepreneurs, artists, and visionaries are people who have failed more times than most have even tried. They've learned to treat failure as part of the process, not a personal flaw. They don't ask, why did this happen to me? They ask, what can I learn from this? That simple shift turns every setback into a setup for something better. Failure builds resilience, it humbles you, it sharpens your strategy, it tests your commitment to the vision. If everything worked the first time, you'd never build the strength to handle the weight of real success. You'd never develop the wisdom to steward the opportunities you're praying for. So when failure shows up, don't resent it, study it. Ask what it's trying to show you. Maybe the timing was wrong, maybe the message was unclear. Maybe the market didn't need what you thought it did. That doesn't mean you're wrong, it means you're learning, and learning is the path to mastery. Every no carries the seed of a better yes. Every closed door can redirect you to something greater. But only if you stay in motion, only if you let failure talk to you instead of talking you out of trying again. So fail fast, fail forward, and fail often, because every failure you face is really just feedback in disguise. It's not there to stop you, it's there to shape you. Discernment is greater than data. That may sound counterintuitive in a world obsessed with numbers, metrics, and analytics, but it's the truth that separates those who merely analyze from those who actually lead. Data can tell you what happened, it can show you patterns, trends, and probabilities, but it can't always tell you why something happened or what you should do next. Discernment fills that gap. It's the God-given ability to perceive beyond the obvious, to sense timing, motive, and direction when the data looks neutral or even misleading. It's not anti-data, it's above data, because information alone is not enough. You need insight. You need the inner compass that helps you navigate moments when logic and numbers don't tell the whole story. There are situations where the numbers look good, but something feels off. Or everything looks like a green light on paper, but your spirit says pause. That's discernment, and ignoring it can cost you more than any spreadsheet could ever calculate. Data is helpful, but it's limited to the past. It's based on what has happened. Discernment helps you navigate what's about to happen. It prepares you for what hasn't yet occurred. The best decision makers don't rely solely on charts and figures. They listen to their instincts, their experience, their wisdom, and yes, often that still, small voice that doesn't show up on a dashboard but carries the weight of truth. You can have all the information in the world and still make the wrong decision if you lack discernment. Why? Because data doesn't always reflect human behavior, divine timing, or unseen factors. It can't read character. It doesn't know motives. It can't predict the cost of a misaligned relationship or a misjudged partnership. Discernment sees what data overlooks. It tells you when to move, when to wait, when to walk away, and when to press through. And those decisions can't always be explained in a boardroom, but they often prove to be the wisest moves over time. The truth is, we've been conditioned to trust numbers over our own knowing. We second guess our intuition because it's not quantifiable. But some of the biggest regrets people carry come from moments when they knew something was wrong, but ignored it because the data said otherwise. Discernment isn't about being emotional or impulsive. It's about being deeply aligned. It's about being connected to something greater than logic, to wisdom, to experience, to spirit. Discernment slows you down when necessary and moves you forward when it's time, even if the data says it's risky. The most impactful leaders learn to blend both, data for awareness, discernment for direction. They consult the facts, but they trust the voice inside, because what looks like a smart move on paper may be the wrong move in real life. What appears small in the data could be monumental in impact, and what seems like a step back might actually be a divine setup for something greater. Data informs, but discernment leads, and when they're in tension, always bet on discernment.